go ahead, start this off.
Yeah, 5 minutes passed, so time to get started. I'm glad to see a good turnout again this week. We have a bunch of stuff to get through, but I myself don't have a whole lot to report. Just kind of some of our upcoming events that we have going on. We just had a new Hacks podcast drop. One recently was on job security in the era of COVID-19 and how our industry and particular security are relatively stable places to work. So that might be something you want to check out. We have had 2 virtual meetups so far. We are doing those via Zoom and then streaming them live on Twitch. And then for those who missed the meetup, the video will be posted on YouTube, and you can go to our Twitch at SaltStack Inc. to find the stream of yesterday's meetup. What else? We are scheduling another testing clinic that will be May 7th. So it'll be about a month from the previous one that we had, and we may wind up doing a 3rd one. We'll have to wait and see what everybody thinks they need. And then other than that, I wanted a couple quick updates on some of the ongoing things. Is Wayne on to tell us the latest on the IRC bridge? Yeah, there is.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry. For some reason, Zoom doesn't really like to give me my, it should put a mute button on the little side view pane, because otherwise you can't find your window all the time. Anyways, so we are still working through the IRC bridge. I believe that last week I mentioned that we've got some I believe last week I mentioned that we have we had made some progress there with being able to bridge across IRC and Slack and Gitter as well, using a matrix bridge. So it's still ongoing effort. We're looking at getting a little bit more testing going on with that, because what we've done so far has just been like 3 or 4 of us across the different platforms, which isn't really a realistic test. So we're still working on that and getting a little bit more live tests to see how that works for people. So that's the progress there.
Cool, thank you. And then the last thing that I had was just to remind everybody that there is still an outstanding SEP for the release labels. There's also a Slack channel for SEP, so please check that out if you have opinions or things you'd like to contribute. I'm not sure how much longer we'll keep that open, but wanted to call people's attention to it before we go ahead and close it.
I have another one, the Python version support. If anybody can take a look at that. I just updated it with some recommendations. So that one should be getting merged in the next couple weeks as well.
Okay, good to know. Anybody else have any announcements or housekeeping before we move on?
What version support are you talking about?
What?
I'll post it in the comments.
Okay. I know there's I made a comment last night or yesterday about the Python 3.8, how like all the stuff we use to get the Linux distribution is gone from the platform module. So we either need to write our own or just include the distro module as a hard dependency for Python 3 or 3.8.
Already do it for Red Hat 8 and Debian 10.
And I think there's an open PR that Pedro put in a day or 2 ago that I believe does that. He added requirements files for Python 3.8 and 3.9 as well. So you may I'll see if I can find that and post that link in this chat here.
Does that include distro, Pedro?
No, it does not include so that's basically like the starting point for us testing 3.8 without any fixes. So in this particular case, distro is not there. And I guess for 3.8, we should consider distro as a hard dependency instead of just a testing dependency.
Yeah, well, right now there is in the globals, like in an unprotected by exception, Not in a try block. In other words, there's an import of something that of an attribute that just doesn't exist in Python 3.8. So at minimum, that needs to be moved somewhere. Probably inside the try except where we import the Linux distribution function out of that module, and then like I was saying, consider hard dependency on 3.8 and above.
Are you talking about the
Yep.
grains? I think there's
Yeah, that's in the grains, the core grains, core.py.
pretty sure there's a PR that is handling that, but let me check,
Okay.
and I'll message it to you.
All right, yeah, it wasn't referenced at the last I looked in that particular issue, so or I didn't see it as a linked issue, so I just wanted to make sure that was on your radar.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I just posted a link to a PR in the chat, so I believe that's the one. If you guys can check that.
All right, any other housekeeping or announcements I missed? Meetup topics, I know our next meetup is going to be Gareth talking about building self-healing systems with salt. That meetup will be running next Wednesday evening and then the following Wednesday during the day for people in US time zones. So we can again meet a number of different availabilities.
One comment, Cassandra, about the meetup is that I'm sure everybody understands, meetups have completely had to change their way of working. Nobody is looking at the physical side of it. But we've been getting a couple of requests in from folks who are still signing up for meetups in different chapters, in Bangalore or Salt Lake or so on. And it seems the theme is people would love to hear from folks who are using Salt or implementing Salt in-house. So if there's anybody on the call or if there's somebody listening to the call afterwards or so on, who would love to be part of one of the upcoming virtual meetups, just lend your support, lend your story to how you're using Salt to either manage Macs or Windows or networking or whatever it may be. It seems like that's one of the key themes that are coming in. So we'd love to give you the platform and the support to tell that story.
Yeah, and if you're not comfortable even doing a full conference talk, if we found enough people that were interested on it, you could have like 3 people do a panel and talk about the different use cases for Salt. So definitely if you're interested in either giving a formal talk or wanting to be part of a panel, which I'm a pretty experienced speaker and I do feel like panels are a good way to get started in that because there are multiple people on the panel. So if you don't know the answer to the question, somebody else there does. And you wind up learning, as well as teaching on a panel. So that's definitely something we could look into putting together if we don't have a dedicated talk. But definitely, meetups are a weekly thing, and the biggest challenge for meetup organizers is finding a consistent track of speakers, and so I will always be looking for them. All right, next we have an update about the CVE release and response policy. I'm not sure if Mo or Sage is going to take that, but
no, I think I'll give the intro and actually Diwas can give a quick update. So team, one of the things to be aware of for, again, those who are in the session live or those who are listening afterwards, one of the things that has been raised to our attention is that a security vulnerability has been identified. I would classify that as, a high priority one that we're working through. The official, of course, definition is critical, actually. The team has been working behind the scenes on making a CVE release available. And we're going to we want everybody to have a heads up that CVE release is going to be coming out next Wednesday. We're aiming for 12:30 Mountain Time for the CVE release to be available. One of the things that we've been working with this particular security analyst on is, of course, to make sure that everybody gets the heads up so that they can prepare for it. But then we will share the details, of course, closer to the time that we make the CVE available. You'll have the full disclosure, how you remediate, etc., and all of that. One of the things that we will be sharing out to the community today, so I just want to say that before I allow Diwas to give a little bit more details, is that please watch out in the Slack channels, on the IRC and so on. There is a part of our best practices and recommendations that talks about ensuring that your Salt masters are not exposed on the internet, that it looks like some people have not been following. So we want to make sure that folks pay attention to that. Go follow some of these best practices. because that's something that should be done irrespective of the CVE release itself. So heads up, CVE release is coming. It'll be titled 3000.2. It will be available on Wednesday, 12:30 Mountain Time. The full details of which will be exposed right before the packages. As a heads up to it, we'll be sharing some information that will not compromise, of course, users, but will sort of guide people towards some precautionary actions that they can take ahead of that particular CVE. Diwaz, do you want to give some little more flavor to the team here around the CVE itself? Well, the two CVEs.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't go into too much detail, obviously, until we have the packages ready to go. The one thing I would say is that it's definitely one that you're going to want to prepare to upgrade for. So be prepared for next Wednesday to go ahead and do some upgrades. Other than that, I would just like to reiterate, I think what Mo was pointing out is that we have the hardening salt guide, and you should be following all of those recommendations in that guide. If there, I'll paste a link to that in the chat. I'm gonna have to find it, but I'll paste a link to it in the chat. Are there any questions regarding all this?
Another question to us, but just a comment. I actually just pasted the link to it for the benefit of the team.
Great.
In the in the chat. Any questions on the CVE release update, team? Let's ask Cassandra.
All right. Then next up, we have Megan and the continued discussion about Town Crier and Changelog. And I believe the goal is to have a conversation about this and make a decision about what we're going to implement. So Megan, take that.
Yeah, so I can give an update what we talked about last time. We had discussed using Town Crier or using what's called conventional commits. It seemed like last time more were in favor of Town Crier. I also led the discussion with tech writers internally because the whole goal is to make the changelog more readable. So we're going to take the Town Crier approach. Instead of the conventional commits, it was suggested maybe using both. But for right now, we just want to take one approach. And if conventional commits ever come in handy in the future and provide us more functionality, we're always willing to consider that as well. But in order to solve the changelog problem, I think Town Crier is definitely the way to go. I think we'll get some more human readable changelogs compared to the different approach with conventional commits. So yeah, if anybody has any disagreements, please speak up, or questions. I'm going to be preparing the Town Crier PR. It will change the way that people have to make contributions. So of course I've included documentation, and then I'll work with Cassandra to make sure we get an announcement out so that everybody knows how it's going to affect them, and also come up with a plan how we're going to deal with all the PRs in the backlog, because of course we don't want to add that additional burden onto PRs that still need to be merged in, but only on new PRs. So yeah, does anybody have any questions about that? All right, great.
Great. Next up is, I know that PRs and the PR backlog has been a topic of conversation every week, and we've been getting a lot of status updates on this. This week we spent 2 days doing a PR port jam in order to help break down some of that backlog. So I think that Gareth, I'm not sure who's covering that, but want to give you some updates about what was accomplished and the what our next steps look like moving forward.
Yeah, I can speak to that for a few minutes. So yeah, as Cassandra said, we the core team spent the last 2 days running through all the PRs that we had identified as wanting to get ported up to master. So we had identified about 100 or so that we wanted to make sure that we got into the sodium release. And of that 100, I think it was like 104, we got pull requests in for just about all of them. And then of that 100, we have merged, in addition to some other pending PRs that were in the queue, about 50 of them. So we're still kind of running through the list of ones that we have ported. Some of them have failing tests. Some of them needed to be updated. But yeah, that's where we're at. So we will have an additional port jam, co-jam for the community to get involved with. So we'll identify some of the PRs that are pending that we want to kind of focus on that. And I think that's scheduled to happen. Is it next week or the week after, Cassandra?
We're still working on an exact date.
Okay.
We have targeted, I think we targeted the first week of May for it, is what I was hoping. So we will figure out those details and share those here in the next couple days.
Great. So yeah, just all good efforts to get our list of backports and master ports down. So just to recap, the original list was like 900 or so. So now we kind of did some rough calculations this morning in one of our meetings, and we should be down closer to like just under 300 that are left to go. So it's a good effort so far.
4 something last week, I think. So yeah, that's awesome.
So to just build on that, Gareth, I think the team is going to take one more crack on the port side. So we probably are going to quickly be able to get a few more in there, and then hopefully through the board that Sage had shared, the community can quickly see and access what else is left behind. That of course would go into post sodium, and we would work through those. But again, I think between the efforts of this first port jam and then the one that we're doing through the community, we'll be able to handle those, plus, of course, just the general PR backlog. To that end, actually, Cassandra, if I may, I know we said that we're going to send the details out to the team, but it will be wonderful to just get some feedback here, from Nick and Carl and Eric and the rest of the team, Christian and folks who are with us on the call. If there is any advice or suggestions as to how we would set up such a jam, that would be much appreciated. The notion, of course, is that we assign a block of time, we divide up, of course, the PRs, those that are missing tests, we get some of the tests in, we do the review, and we go through the whole cycle, and of course, push them in. And it was actually a suggestion by a couple of community members that said, hey, why don't we gather up to do this particular jam? So are there logistical things that we should be considering? Any suggestions that you have, team, before we go ahead and finalize some of the details for those?
Well, just in terms of community involvement, knowing for sure like which ones are a priority to get done would help. Like what I've been doing is going from the older ones, because sometimes older ones that are in that on the projects list, in the list of PR support to master. I've been going to the older ones and trying to get those done, and then trying to get newer ones after that, because there are certain PRs that added new code like to the development branch, to the develop branch, that later PRs iterated on. So if you do the later ones first, then that's going to be problematic. But I don't know if there's a better way, if they're through labeling or whatever, then I want to make sure that whatever assistance that I provide is actually helpful.
Yeah, no, thank you, Eric. That's a great suggestion. From any others as well, please, if you can think about a jam where people come together in a time box and work through this, and the core team is available, hand in hand to work through them. Are there any other thoughts, requirements on logistics, etc.? I think the board is a great idea, Eric. Any others?
One thing I can bring up just from what I learned helping out in our internal jam is that a surprising number of these PRs either exist in master or in a few cases, they've been superseded by changes that have happened in master. I know in one case there was a fix, but there was a much more complete fix that was done in master, so it ended out just not being necessary. And this is something people can do kind of as asynchronously, just whenever they have time, is to go through some of that backlog and just check and say, is this one that still needs to be in master? We've actually, I think we've got a column in the project board, and I want to say it's something like 250 PRs we've moved to that column that they just simply don't need a PR or a port to master because they've been ported in some other form or fashion. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges with what we have in the backlog right now that could be tackled kind of ahead of time.
In one instance, I found that it was in master, but not completely. Like it was missing certain portions of it as well.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Thanks for dropping that link, Sage. That's the link to the PR project board, and I will post that in the open hour notes once those go up.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's the board that I've been working off of, but I was wondering within that list, are there ones that have been identified that are a priority? And is that being, or is it just anything from that left column?
So we started with a label, and because the project board was so vast, I don't know that we labeled all of them, but we started with that, and it's labeled Code Jam.
Okay.
And we'll probably do that as well as we look towards a date and we time box it for community involvement. We'll probably look to that as well, but we're open to suggestions. Maybe even doing a separate board for that Code Jam is what's needed, and that's fine too. Open to that.
Yeah, I think we should do a separate board just for that jam, Sage, when we get to it, because I think that will then give us the target list that we want to hit in that small window. Now, I think Eric's, if I'm not mistaken, Eric, you're talking about in general as you're picking off of that board. Give me an additional label that says, is this important, or is Eric picking any one of those equally, valuable? And at the moment, picking any one of those is valuable, but we're still refining them to add additional labels. So keep doing it, brother. And then if we add another label, we will.
Another thing about the jam is even we're open to logistical suggestions. Like if there are certain days or times of day that work best for a majority of people, that would be when we'd want to do this.
I don't know if Nick or Alexander were about to say something, because at least they appeared on my screen. Sorry, if there are some other suggestions to Cassandra's questions, Alexander or Nick or others, please feel free to chime in.
Yeah, we also have people across the United States as well as across the pond. And so we could do all hours of the day and maybe even have a check-in spot or somebody that's going to be assigned during those times to have an open Zoom call or session or something like that, so that we could even time box it over a 24-hour period for where people are in the world. And we're international, so we can accommodate that. And I think that actually sounds kind of fun, and open to other suggestions too.
Feel free
Just
to
watch out for Pedro's dog when that Zoom session. He definitely is being protective of Pedro.
He barks loudly, yes.
And as always, you can drop, suggestions and things in the chat here, DM them to myself. So lots of ways to give us feedback. But that was actually the last thing that we have on the formal agenda. So we have still half an hour for kind of open community conversation and discussions. I did see one question that came through on a DM. Can we provide an update on the release milestones, merge window freeze, and expectations on progress?
So I did put a link into where we have this in Slack, and I can send a link for some other places. I think we also have it in the GitHub community board, the wiki, that timeline for sodium. And I think I'm making the right assumption that that's the timeline that people are looking for, is the sodium release. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
I'll put a few more links in.
Yeah, just going to say there've been several questions on Slack about the freeze window, when people need to expect to have their PRs in, when should they expect to have their PRs merged by, and DWAS, I don't know if you want to add any more flavor to that, but my understanding is we've been merging a couple of times a week. So if a PR doesn't have any feedback on it, or rather if it's been approved and the tests are passing, it should be merged within a week. And if not, somebody should reach out to us and say, hey, I think you're missing my PR. And we should also expect to have feedback on PRs at least multiple times per week. So if it's gone a few days without any kind of feedback, should definitely be pinging the person who's assigned to review the PR. And if you don't hear back from them, somebody else on the core team, and say, hey, can my PR get some attention?
I know a great automation framework that we could use to gather that information and post it to Slack.
We've been using PullPanda to some success or another. But yeah, sometimes things fall through the crack for whatever reason. We do have some people who get assigned are a little bit more fluid in where their focus is, and so yeah, we do want to make sure that we're making getting people feedback on their PRs. So if we need to shuffle things around assignments and just make sure that we are getting people feedback so that these PRs can get it merged in, we definitely want to do that.
Hey, any other questions that anybody has right now?
I had one more from a development standpoint, so I don't know if there's a right place for this or not.
Yes, that's
but
exactly.
As long as we have plenty of core devs here, might be a good place to voice it. I did mention also in the develop channel in Slack, but one of the things that Salt does during a Salt run is it refreshes the Salt Dunder dictionary which is what most modules and states use for to check and see if they have the needed requirements, so that and if not, those modules aren't available. And so this presents a problem for when people install pip packages. And then there are states or execution modules which depend on those. They can't be used in the same Salt run unless you add a refresh modules argument to the pip state. And we already, for system packages, so the PKG, I think there's also for the ports module for those FreeBSD folks. Though any states that are in those, or any states with changes that are in those two modules, automatically trigger a refresh. And I think it's probably a good idea, unless there's a good idea not to. I think that there's a good idea to add, or it would be a good idea to add an automatic refresh for pip states that have changes. And so the only reason I didn't open a PR already is because I figured maybe if it hadn't been done yet, there's a good reason. So I wanted to bring that up.
My guess is that it's just an oversight in the pip module, and that the package module, it was added reason. So I think it's probably makes Go ahead.
This is in state.py. It's part of the state compiler. It's when it's processing returns for additional, states as they come in. Like it'll refresh the salt under if there's a package state or port state with changes, and that's also how the refresh modules works. So if you include that as a state argument. So, but yeah, if there's no good reason not to, I'll go ahead and open up a pull request for that. It's like a one-line change.
Yeah, I think we should do it.
Okay.
What's on everybody else's mind?
I think Carol was commenting as well on this discussion in the chat.
Oh yeah, he says even with the refresh modules, true, there is an issue with the custom states, he believes.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that? What issue?
He's going to try to confirm and file an issue.
The way the refresh modules work is it refreshes, but only if that state with refresh modules on it has changes. And there's also a force refresh modules that will refresh it even if there's not changes.
All right, anything else anybody wanted to bring up?
Should we show our new animation?
Our new animation?
Have you guys seen it yet? I don't know if I can pipe it through. Maybe I'll just link it. I don't know how to link directly to it, but it's on our website. Have a little animation about digital business is complex. Humans alone can't keep it optimized, reliable, and secure. I'll paste it in the chat. You do have to scroll down just a little bit to see it.
Oh, I see it, yeah.
It's a little over a minute. I only have copy pasta skills. I don't have audio skills. So somebody else who has that in Zoom, maybe you could display.
we need Shane for that.
Yeah, we had no guitar music today at the beginning of the open hour. I'm a little sad about that.
We were getting down to business.
Oh. Yeah. All right. Well, if there's not a lot else that anybody else wants to discuss, we can wrap up early unless anybody on core team has anything they want to add.
Thank you, Cassandra, and thank you, team, and appreciate people noticing the work on the PR. I know there's been some comments in there on the backlog, and obviously a marvelous and a sincere thank you to everybody who in the community is helping us, tackle that board and that backlog. And of course, for all the suggestions and ideas around handling reviews and the like. If I may, Cassandra, maybe also just to give a reminder that we are also still working through a longer list of improvements that had come from the community. So we are still working through, opening up the aperture for additional reviewers. That will come at the heels of us, of course, closing out the step with the labels. We're working with the work group leaders, with Nick and others to also extend the merge, power and so on and so forth. So the intent is, of course, now that we've reached a point where we've, I think, done some internal improvements onto the systems and continue to do improvements, with Andre joining us, we've added another team member and so on, around test automation and expediting the test cycles. I think we now can start to expedite the whole notion of PR reviews, PR merges, and shorten that cycle. So just want to let the community know that that's top of mind for us every day as we work through this. And of course, I want to thank Cassandra for keeping us honest and making sure that we are responding diligently and fast to some of these comments. So please keep it up, keep the suggestions, keep the passion. This community is just as strong as its members and its contributions. So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Cassandra.
Thank you.
Wayne, are you going to share?
Oh, there we go. Maybe.
I don't think that was it, but there we go.
It would probably work if you were on Windows.
Well, there's an option on Zoom.
Sorry for the long exchange.
There should be an option to enable computer sound in Zoom.
Meanwhile, I was interested in that meme that had Tyler in it. I mean, one moment everybody's checking him out, the other he's in a prison cell. So
You're right.
I'm going to use that other.
No sound.
Yeah, Wayne, you need to
That's what you like, Mo.
select the option in Zoom itself to play your computer audio.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I was on mute. Can you hear now?
The reality is there are not enough.
Was there any sound to that?
Yes. Yes.
That worked.
All right. Excellent.
Global business today is built on rapidly expanding digital infrastructure. With increasing scale comes unavoidable complexity. This complexity requires diligent security and never-ending maintenance 24/7. The reality is there are not enough skilled IT and cybersecurity professionals on Earth to optimize and secure the infrastructure required for modern business. Technology pros need help, or the business will suffer. They need intelligent automation. SaltStack Automation works at any scale to automate the work of cybersecurity, IT management, and integrated security operations. When security tasks are automated and when IT and security professionals start working together, business succeeds. SaltStack Automation is uniquely designed to provide the most scalable, most intelligent, and most flexible automation for every IT operations and security challenge facing digital business today and tomorrow. Contact us today to schedule a demo of SaltStack Automation for your IT and security operations needs.
Yay.
You did it.
Yay, marketing.
We're excited about voice in Zoom. That's
We're excited about the voice in Zoom.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
thank you, team.
Thank
Everybody
you.
have a wonderful day. Thank you, Wayne, for sharing that.
Bye, everybody.